Hi, welcome to Broadcasting in Black and White. As always, I'm Joe Masiri here with Kenton Young.
Hello.
And our guest today, Dexter Henry. We'll get to that in just a second, but obviously a couple different firsts here. You might notice we're on location today. We are broadcasting from Burger Bistro. So if you hear some sounds in the background, that's what's going on. They have 3 great locations on the Upper East Side and Park Slope, and we are currently at their Bay Ridge location. They've got 2 million types of burgers, so if we're chewing in between, well, you know why. Also, we have a video podcast with this, so you can check out that on the website and the blog. It'll be up there so you can actually see what we look like as we're doing this. And
you can see me sip on my wine.
Sipping on wine. So another first for us. We will be doing this podcast with wine, and we have our guest with us in person today. So we are jumping right into it. Dexter, thanks so much for being with us today, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Right.
I'm very excited to be here. Very excited.
Dexter, one of the things that we're noticing when it comes to this podcast is the theme of hustle comes up time and time again, and you are definitely a hustler. So you do work for Nets Daily.
Yep.
You're freelancing at News 12, and you've also started your own company, Backpack Broadcasting.
Yeah.
How is it managing all 3 of those?
And there's a fourth. I'm also the part-time new media coordinator at St. Francis College. So
wow. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot. By root, I'm West Indian, and we stereotypically have a lot of jobs. Yes, 10 jobs. Grenada. Yes.
Kenton barely had any wine yet, so this is going to get really interesting.
So, but you know what? It's great. I love it. I love the flexibility. I love somewhat being able to control some of my own content, and it's just a diverse plethora of experiences that I get to experience through different things. I love it, man. I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, let's start with Backpack Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Take us through what exactly is it for people who might not know,
Yeah.
and how'd you come up with the idea, and why'd you want to start it?
Yeah, so the first part for people who may not know, Backpack Broadcasting is a news outlet, news and sports. It started off with just me doing it by myself, one-man band journalism, and just creating my own video content, and then it kind of shifted over to covering a lot of high school sports, and now what it's evolved more into, part of the business model is doing live streaming of events and games, and I've been doing a lot of that in the last year. How it started.
Yes, this is what I want to know, because I think anyone that wants to be an MMJ right now,
Right.
you know, it's not an easy job.
Right. No.
Not an easy job.
No.
So for you to volunteer yourself to go out and do it on your own,
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. What made you want to do that?
The key was I was working for a couple of places, and I worked at the New York Post as an online video journalist, and then I worked for another company. And while I was at that company, they told me that I would have opportunities to do more stuff on camera, to tell more stories in the sports world, as Joe knows.
Yep.
And I didn't get those opportunities. So a seed had been planted in my head a long time ago from my mentor, Jamoke Davis, who is the video coordinator for the Washington Wizards. And he told me a long time ago, you need to start your own thing. Do your own kind of backpack journalism. So that's where the name Backpack kind of came in there. But what I decided to was create my own opportunity. And what I did was when I was going out to events, I was covering for this other company I was working for, I started shooting extra for myself and keeping for myself and doing my own packages. And I watched people who did packages, and that actually led to open up other doors for me. At first it just started off me saying, hey, this is a way I need to get my reel out there and create a reel for myself. So I'm going to create my own stories, report, do stand-ups, do that kind of stuff. That was really the genesis of it.
Let me interrupt there just for a second, because I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast, we're gearing this toward people who want to break into this business.
Yeah.
And you say that, you kept a lot of that material or shot extra material for yourself.
Yeah.
How was that viewed in the company, or was that something you had to kind of go around? How do you think it would have been viewed? And also, when you had that material, did you have the equipment to edit it on your own? Did you find friends who helped you with that? How'd that come about?
Good questions. I had the equipment to edit on my own. Okay. Actually, what first happened was it wasn't viewed well in the company. They didn't know of it at first, even though technically by contract as a freelancer, anything that they didn't use, I had the rights to use. That they didn't use for themselves. They only owned whatever I sent to them and edited for pieces.
Oh, that's good.
So they knew that. And I did do the proper clearance. I want to let everybody know that. I went through teams that I was covering and told them what I was doing. So the teams were aware of this and knew this. When they found out, the company that was not keen of it too much, and they told me you can't do this on company time, which was a very interesting time in my life because I was kind of disappointed because I had to stop it. But what that did was I shifted to then covering high school sports here in Brooklyn. And I bought my own equipment. I didn't have my own camera at the time. I went and bought my own camera. My Canon XH-A1. That was my baby, my first baby. I went and bought that. Actually, my fiance, she was my girlfriend at the time. She really encouraged me to go and do that. And I started going out to local high school games that I had a relationship with and covering them and making my own packages. And that opened up the eyes of other people that were doing it too.
So, at that time in your career, this is one of the things that we talk to a lot of young people about, especially.
Yeah.
Cameras aren't cheap.
No.
You're making an investment, though. How hard is it, because money might be tight at that time, to make that investment in your career and in yourself, really?
Money was tight at that time, and it was hard to make that investment. Fortunately, what I would recommend for a lot of people do, it's amazing how much connections you have, and even in New York City, how small the journalism world and sports journalism world is. There was a guy, I reached out to a guy I knew who worked at MLB.com, where I used to edit earlier on in my career. He knew another guy who was selling a camera. He was selling that camera for $2,000 and offered to give me a payment plan where I paid it off over 4 months.
That's great.
So that was a huge help for me. And
that
you know what,
doesn't happen.
sometimes you can find deals like that. If you look at places off the side or different websites, you might be able to find something. But you know what, that was fortunate for me. I jumped on that opportunity. And
if you've got somebody vouching for you that, hey, this kid's going to come through on the payment plan, that definitely helps a long way.
No doubt about that. It did help.
All right, so let's bring it back to backpack broadcasting then. Okay, so now you've got your camera, you're shooting your own stuff. It opened up the other opportunities. When did you make the jump to actually start this company?
But I made the jump. I think that was when I officially went and started. It was November of 2010. I started kind of doing it, and one night I was in my apartment, and my cousin came over, and I didn't have a name for what I was doing yet. There was no name yet, and my cousin said to me, I was trying to come up with a name. I said, it has to be something about backpack journalism on the go. She said backpack broadcasting, and I said, that's it. So that day I made a YouTube page, Facebook fan page, and made my Twitter account.
So that's what you started with: YouTube, Facebook fan page, and Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. I didn't even have a website then.
Okay.
And that's what I started with. I just kept putting out content with that, with high school basketball, and a lot of, I covered a lot of PSAL basketball here in Brooklyn, and a lot of people followed it. It was amazing to me. I couldn't believe how many people got attraction to it, and they were looking for it. They were impressed with the turnaround. I think a lot of student athletes related to it because I used to play basketball then in PSAL, and it really took off, and I saw it had a following, and and then I said, you know what, this is legit. But I still didn't know where I wanted to go with it. All I wanted was somebody to see that I was out there reporting and that I could report and I could create packages. And this was my way to hone my skills. That's really all I cared about at the time. I didn't look at it as a business.
Yeah. And you've taken that two ways now. You've taken it to turn it into other jobs for yourself, and then kind of they feed each other. Can you talk a little bit about that symbiotic relationship you've got?
Yeah, the first real, I feel like, opportunity that came for me directly from Backpack Broadcasting was Nets Daily. And I love doing my reporting for Nets Daily. How that happened was my same mentor, Jamal Davis, has a relationship with some of the SB Nation blogs, which Nets Daily is a part of. And he said, why don't you try to report for Nets Daily? I'm forgetting what the Knicks one is called here in the city. But I reached out to Nets Daily. They saw my backpack broadcasting. Well, they said, hey, I like you. And a guy named Robert Windrum, who runs the site, told he wanted to meet with me for an interview. They met with me. They said they wanted to bring me on, and I've been reporting for them ever since. And the other opportunity that came about from Backpack Broadcasting was News 12.
Let me just apologize to people who are listening, going in and out. We've got a cold night out here and a slamming door, so that's the noise you're hearing in the background.
It's not angry folks.
Yeah, and they're not beating the chicken or something like that. Just so you know.
Yeah, burgers are definitely
So
great,
anyway, I'm sorry. So that led to Nets Daily and
News 12. News 12, actually, from covering a lot of basketball and other sports, I met and got to know a lot of the guys that worked in News 12 in the sports department, and they saw my work. And then some of them even knew me from when I just started working at St. Francis as well, too. And Pat O'Keefe, the sports director in the Brooklyn Bronx News 12, he wasn't aware that I had reported. He saw me one time doing a stand-up, and I was like, yeah, I report. And he was like, oh, you saw some of my stuff? And he's like, it's pretty good. And they brought me in for an interview for a position that I actually didn't get. And they really liked me as a finalist, and they told me that if anything ever opened up, they would keep me in mind. And they did. A year later, a freelance opportunity opened up, and I started doing some reporting in Brooklyn, Bronx, and I also do some in New Jersey in their Friday night football show. So that really all came about because of Backpack Broadcasting. If I didn't create my own reel, if I didn't create my own opportunity, that never would have came about.
This story is amazing, man.
Yeah.
I'm just in awe. I'm just sitting there like,
do you know where Pat saw your initial stand-up, or where he?
I was working for Nets Daily that night, and I was on the floor of the Barclays Center doing a post-game rap. And he came over to me after and said that he didn't know that I reported. He thought I just shot. He had no idea. And then he asked me to send him my stuff, and I did. And that's how that came about.
That's awesome. So just a note to anybody listening, if you do something, if you show somebody that you can do something, then you do it, and they might take you on.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people may not know what you can do. I think the lesson, I know Kenton's saying he's amazed by the story, and sometimes I think back about it, how crazy it is that everything fell into place. And I don't think it's by chance, but I think that you have to put yourself out there, not be afraid to put yourself out there and put content out there. And the way things are so available to put content out there, we've got to keep doing it, because there's people out there that want the content.
Especially right now, because one of the areas that you said you were focusing on was the high school sports and those types of things. Now, are you actually broadcasting some of these games live?
Now we are.
That's crazy. Tell me about how you're able to do that now.
That's a good story too, man.
And you're doing this by yourself?
No, I'm not doing it by myself. Okay. That would be almost impossible. I mean, well, you know what? Let me say this to this. Could you do it by yourself? Yes. Could you do it to the level of quality that I expect to do it? No. That would be the answer. How that came about, that Joe asked, is that also at the time last year I was working for a company that I left, and I was not happy at the company. I was doing like some video production work for them, and I've learned how to produce live streaming of games while working at St. Francis. That's primarily what I do there. I produce their live stream content. A student
Danielle,
of mine,
you can bring them on here. We obviously got some food, being that we're here at Burger Bistro, so we're waiting. I mean, don't judge me too much here, but I went with the tuna burger. It's delicious, so we got a little bit of room over here. I'm gonna move the wine out of the way.
Beef with fried egg, and what else did I get, Daniel? Cheddar cheese and caramelized onions.
Yeah.
But I went healthy with the salad.
Yeah, he went healthy with the salad.
Do you guys need anything?
So,
I think we're
don't judge us too much here. While we're doing this, I figure we should let Dexter take a bite, because his is getting cold over there. He got the turkey burger, so I feel bad because he does most of the talking. We're going to be able to sneak in a couple bites along the way, I'm sure, while we're entertained, as we have been, obviously. And it's very good. Well, maybe I'll take some pictures here. We'll put them up on Instagram and the blog as well for all the foodies out there. But anyway, when you're done with that bite, pick that up again for me. How do you do the live events to the level that you expect?
So what I was saying was I do this at St. Francis College, and I produce the live streams of their games for all the different sporting events. And one of my students, actually I will credit him, his name is Gregory Alcala.
Okay.
He really pushed me and said, hey, you're doing this and you cover these high school sports. Why aren't you doing this yourself? You know, you have all this, and he really was adamant about me doing it. One night he really told me, like, Dexter, you have to do this.
I love it.
And you know what? I thought about it more, and I wasn't happy at this full-time situation that I had, and I decided to say, you know what? I'm leaving this, and I'm going to do this. And so what I did...
How scary was that?
Very scary.
Yeah.
I was recently engaged. We were making plans to do a lot of stuff in our lives, myself and my fiance. Oh, she was scared. She'll tell you that. But she was supportive.
Okay.
You know, and
that's great. You really need that.
Yeah, you know, my fiance Marguerite has been extremely supportive of me in every step that I've made in my career.
Good job saying her name.
You need that. I had to.
To you, Marguerite.
So, you know, she was very supportive, but I think Joe asked a good question, because I don't want to put a story out there that, oh, this was great, this was easy, and I just jumped into it.
Yeah.
It wasn't. But it was worth it. I felt freer. I was happier. I had more clarity to go into this. And what I did was I had a relationship with CUNY Athletics.
Okay.
I used to do some video for them. And I knew that they were streaming through another company, not streaming, but broadcasting their games. And I reached out to them and said, hey, you guys are streaming, what do you pay for streaming? I can give you a lower cost alternative. And the guy was very interesting, undercutting. I look at this as a business opportunity.
Listen, you'll make friends in some ways. You might lose some friends along the way too.
But they were intrigued by the idea, and they really wanted to see the quality, and they brought me on to do, this was in February of last year, and they brought me on to do their basketball semifinals over 2 days, and I did them, and they loved it. And that led to doing some more work with them this season, which has gone well. So that was the genesis of it then. That's how it started out, Joe and Kenton. That's what it started, yes.
You mentioned the undercutting. Obviously, there's some technological advances that have helped you do that. Can you talk about what it is involved in the technology aspect in the tools that you're using to put these on?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is with live streaming is you have a couple of options. There's a lot more mobility that you can do with it. A lot of people like to use TriCasters, which are amazing. That's what I use at St. Francis. There's a program I use. I basically have a switcher through my MacBook Pro on a program called Wirecast, and that's how I do. That's how I produce all my live streaming. There are good things about that, and there are limitations about that. The TriCaster can give you, a Wirecast can't. But as long as you have, a couple good cameras, a good switching program, and a strong internet connection, which is key. If you don't have that, you can't get anything done. And a crew of people that can help you, like skilled shooters. So what I do is I've recruited a lot of my students from St. Francis. They're the people that work with me.
That's fantastic.
And they're great. I have a great team of students that work with me that believe in the process of what we're doing.
So how many people do you need to get that job going?
Effectively, I would say a minimum, depending on the sport and how many cameras does somebody ask us. The most we can do is 3 camera shoot. Okay. So at most we're using 4 to 5 people, including myself, to get it done. I use
3 camera ops.
Somebody else who's helping to produce or do graphics.
Okay.
And watch the stream. And usually, sometimes I'll have a social media manager too.
Nice.
I've had somebody do that too, to update on scores on Twitter and tweet stuff out.
And graphics are done live?
That's done live too.
Beautiful.
So if you look at our broadcast, we have live graphics, we have a clock. Sometimes you've seen streams, and no disrespect to anybody else, it's just showing the game, but we have announcers, there's play-by-play in color, so it's just like an actual broadcast. This is what we actually do.
It's not just like an actual broadcast, it is an actual broadcast.
It is, and back in 2010 when I started backpack broadcasting, I did not think I would be doing live streaming. So it's interesting how things I took from St. Francis, that opportunity, and a student there kind of nudging me like, you should do this.
Man.
It's really crazy how things work out. But like I said before, nothing's by chance, man.
Yeah.
Nothing is.
You made sure that student got all A's, right? Across the board.
Yeah, well, I have student workers. I don't teach yet. It's something I want to do eventually.
Right, but you talk to the teachers.
Yeah, I talked to a couple professors and said, yeah, you got to take care of him. So, yeah.
Is it? I'm really stuck on this live streaming thing. Is it something that you would consider easy to do? When you first got introduced to it, was it, complex, or did you say, "Wow, this is I could easily do this"? Or,
There was a lot I knew because of my knowledge of video and working as a one-man band and having produced a lot of stuff. I think you get a lot more knowledge there than you might realize. So I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had before, editing, shooting, even before I was in front of the camera. And when I learned all the stuff about streaming, through being trained at St. Francis, it was a little overwhelming at first. I got to definitely say, because it was a lot. There were things you had to make sure are right, and you also have to deal with play-by-play and color talent, and that taught me a lot about managing personalities and how to deal with people and making sure that they're right, because a lot of it is catering to them too and making sure they're okay.
What had the biggest learning curve for you? Was there something that, because you mentioned the skill set that goes into one-man banding, so you had a lot under your belt already. What was the newest thing to you that took the most learning?
The newest thing, I think, to me was the intensity and the amount of preparation that you had to do beforehand.
Yeah.
I think it's just like even like this, like setting up the show and doing a podcast. You got to check the audio. You got to make sure your color temperatures are right. You got to make sure the sound is okay. Your graphics are good. Making sure you have all the rosters for the lower thirds. There are things like that are required of me. It's not, you just don't go up and show up and stream.
Right.
I'm glad that people can hear this, because I think sometimes people need to appreciate the work that's behind what you do. I think people, when they see it, they appreciate it. I think the feedback's been good, and I think we're learning. And every stream that we do, we learn more about what we need to do better for the next stream. So we just upward and onward, man.
The talent that you use, where do you find them?
Man, all over the place. Because I've also done some play-by-play in color. I sometimes have done play-by-play in color myself. Okay. But depending on the scale of the event, I try not to do that, because I have some students that'll produce and then I'll do the play-by-play. But recently, I've used some people like from MSG Varsity. I've used John Perez recently.
Beautiful.
A guy. I've used some people I know from the work with me at St. Francis. People from other outlets. You talked earlier before how we all have to sort of come together and work together. So I like to use people from smaller outlets who are also looking for other opportunities and are willing to be part of the team or program. I like that.
And also because one day somebody's going to see them on Backpack Broadcasting and say, "Oh, I didn't know you did play-by-play." The same way Pat saw you and said, "Oh, I didn't know you reported."
I think I try to do the same thing. I'm grateful for the opportunities people have given me. And I'll be, something I didn't mention was when I started Backpack Broadcasting, and just beside promoting myself, what I did say I wanted to do was give opportunities to other people to help other people, because I think that's very important in this industry. And sometimes people can be like, "Oh, I don't know if you can go there." And if you can help people out, I think tons of of people have helped me out when I met them and have given, whether it's advice. And I think that's very helpful.
And I honestly, that's one of the inspirations for this podcast, is because it's people don't know who to talk to, and all the time people, you get calls from students here and there, and you give them your time, and obviously, but sometimes this way you can just reach so many more students, so many more people who are in the business, just staying up on the cutting edge trends, because people who have been in the business a long time sometimes don't understand how the technology has changed that allows you to do what you do, because they get lost in it sometimes.
That, I think, getting lost in that in the business was always kind of my fear. I kind of saw when I came into the industry that was happening to certain people that was older than me. And I think you always have to have different avenues, which is why I applaud this podcast, because what you guys are doing is another avenue, another outlet, it's another way for other people to get content. And those things are so important today, because there are people looking for this, there are people that want to know, hey, what can I do? How do I create my own opportunity? And we should be inspiration to those people to do more.
Yeah, and I think there's two types of people, and I think, Kenton, you'll attest to this in your experience, probably more so even than other sides of the business. There are people who are willing to learn and know that change, especially in a business that revolves around technology, the change is the only constant, and you either learn or you dig your heels in.
Right.
And there's two different types of people, and clearly you are the former who is going to learn and adapt and do that. And those are the people who we find the most end up thriving and going the furthest in this business.
And what's the best part is you're paying it forward.
Yeah, yes, it is, and I think that's fulfilling. There's nothing. 2 weekends ago, I did 2 live streams, and it was very tiring, and I was tired, but nothing feels better than creating your own content, even if it's out of your time with everything else you have going on.
Right.
There's no better feeling that, like you said, Kenton, it's very fulfilling.
And
absolutely.
That high school kid that's playing on that court, that probably may not see any type of a TV play or whatever, they can now call their cousins, call whoever, and say, hey, log on to this website and you can see me play that. They feel important. They feel like they're actually doing something.
What's crazy about that is you saying that is that after this last stream I did these 2 games, I posted highlights on Facebook. And I did a little Facebook ad promotion with it, and it really got out to a lot of people to see what I did. Like, I tell people, if you can do Facebook ad promotion, it's definitely worth it. Trust me. It's
all right.
Even if it's like $5.
We've had our toe. We've had our toe in the water.
Even if it's $5, it's definitely worth it. And a lot of high school kids reached out to me and sent me messages. Hey, man, like what you're doing. And now I have kids asking me, can you come to my game? Like next week, they're like, can you come to my game? And I'm like, I can't come in that short of a turnaround. But the fact that they liked the content, appreciated it, and what was developed out there, I think it's fine. I'm hoping that people that see this content, other leagues, high school leagues, start seeing the way it's open for more people to view the product that they put out there.
And go ahead, Kenton.
What I saw on your site, someone wrote in and said, hey, I like what you're doing. How can I come? Do you need an extra shooter? Do you need extra anything? How can I be a part of your team?
Yeah.
That's
happened. It's happened before, and it's happened through other people, and those people have become a part of the team.
Yeah.
I have a friend, my little cousin, he's come and helped me out a couple times. He has a friend who just likes to shoot basketball, and he asked me to be a part of it, and we welcome that because I want those kind of people that are passionate and create opportunities.
And you may not be teaching at St. Francis, but you are teaching those people when they come on the team. That is an on-the-job learning experience.
You know what? You know what's funny? And at St. Francis, I kind of am a teacher. I think my student workers that work under my program, they look at me that way, and I think there's a great responsibility with that. But I do teach them a lot about broadcasting and life, and I try to tell them things like this. I want them to go and create their own stuff. Yes. Not just be with me forever.
Yeah.
I love them for what they do, but they got to do their own thing too.
And I think the market that you're hitting is really interesting because high school sports have a great following and a growing following even throughout the country when you look at it. I mean, there's always been the tradition in smaller markets that don't have professional teams to follow their high school teams, be it Friday Night Lights. When I was in North Carolina, I remember Trot Nixon, you might know that name from the Boston Red Sox, but he was actually a quarterback for New Hanover County when he was growing up in Wilmington, North Carolina. So he came on and he was the host of our sports show, and the following that we got because he was doing our fifth quarter, which was the football show on Friday night, just was huge. In New York, that tends to get lost a lot of times because you have almost, I mean, you have two professional sports teams in every major sport, and now forget about major sports in every sport, and then some. It's growing, so there's definitely a demand for that, and you know, you get the kids who want to see themselves, you get the parents who want to see themselves, you know, who want to see their kids, I should say. Maybe some parents themselves.
So some of them want to see themselves too, and I'm not mad at them for that.
And then you've also got, I mean, listen, parents, paint your chest and go to these games.
We'll put you on.
And then, you know, but then of course you've got the students who want to be involved with this, who then say, hey, look, it's just more to get around that sports team, which helps create that pride around your school and everything involved in there. So there's definitely a market and an opportunity, and I think that's awesome. I'm gonna kind of walk a line here a little bit because teaching what you teach your kids who come work for you, your student workers that are learning on the job, as you said, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, you went to Pitt, right?
Yeah, University of Pittsburgh.
All right, I won't hold that against you since I went to Syracuse.
We beat you the other day in basketball. Nice win. Let's go Pitt
Listen,
Panthers.
we're having some very rough times when it comes to sports overall. We won't get into that. You guys can all Google what happened with Jim Boeheim and that suspension and going back.
I'll leave you alone, Joe. I love you, man. I won't bother you.
Thank you.
So I kind of wanted to see the fight. I'm not.
We're battling out on the mics. Anyway, so no, when it comes to teaching those students and who are getting on-the-job training and your own experience, talk to me about the pros and cons of both the book learning that comes and the classroom learning and the practical out in the field learning when it comes to this business.
If you're asking the right person. I mentioned this person before earlier in this show, and I mentioned my mentor, Jamoke Davis, who works for the Washington Wizards. He is one of the most important people in my life as far as broadcasting, because when I went to the University of Pittsburgh, which is not a broadcasting school the way Syracuse is, which is another thing, and I heard you guys talk about this on other podcasts, you don't have to do that once you get in this industry, nobody cares.
That's right.
And I think it's about the work you put in. But he started up a sports, basically, network, Panther Sports Network at Pitt on the TV station. And when I went to Pitt, I was not going to do broadcast journalism. I was actually going to be into sports medicine.
Oh, and I think this is breaking news here.
Yeah, but I always loved journalism. I just never really tapped into it as much. I wrote for school papers and stuff like that. But when I saw these guys on TV just sitting around talking sports, I was like, man, I could do that. And I went to a meeting and I started doing that. The reason I bring that up, Joe, is that I love my education at the University of Pittsburgh. Great, love my time there. But the best stuff I learned was working for Panther Sports Network, with Jamoke Davis, with the team people. That's where I learned how to shoot. That's where I learned how to make a package. That's where I learned training. That's where I covered Pitt basketball. I started my own basketball show. I did it for 2 years with my co-host Matthew Grubba. So we did that, and what I try to tell kids, what you're alluding to, is that there is nothing better than on-the-job training and that experience. There's no substitute for that. The classroom's great, and I had some great professors too, but the on-the-job, on-the-skills, interviewing players, traveling. I went to NCAA tournament. I went to bowl games. I did all this stuff. You know, I went down to WVU for the backyard brawl.
Stop rubbing it in, all right? You know, just because Syracuse didn't.
I came to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, and your fans were a little unruly to us. I'll leave it at
I'm
that.
sorry to hear that. Listen, Syracuse fans, college fans in general, please, keep it classy no matter where you are. We had a bad experience when we went to West Virginia.
Well, I won't speak about West Virginia. I don't have much good things to say about West Virginia.
Anyway, we digress here. So anyway, it provided you with a ton of opportunities.
With a ton of opportunities, and I think what you're alluding to, and what I try to tell my students, is get that hands-on experience. They learn it working at St. Francis with the stuff we do. They learn a lot of technical experience. I try to have my students move around in different areas, so don't just learn how to shoot.
That's right.
If you don't just learn to be in front of the camera, learn what to do behind the camera. Because if I didn't have the opportunities to learn to do things behind the camera, it wouldn't have opened up other doors for me.
And let me tell you this. One thing that I get, and maybe I'm being presumptuous here, but I feel like I have a very good rapport with a lot of the photographers and editors and producers that I work with, because I've done all that. I've walked in their shoes, and so I understand when you ask a photographer to walk through Central Park with the camera on their shoulder, that they're not going to like you very much. Let's work smarter before we have to work harder. So you walk in their shoes, or producers getting in your package early so they're not sweating, hey, is this going to make it for deadline? Knowing how to do those other jobs, at least a little bit, because, you know, if you're eventually get to a point where you can't specialize the way some people have, but knowing at least a little bit of what they're going through definitely helps you be more liked around.
As a photog, I'm going to co-sign that. You're absolutely right. If you're coming in and I know you picked up a camera, I know that you produced, I know you have that background, I tend to listen to you a little more, or listen to your opinion, or take your opinion.
And then when somebody says, oh, did you get that shot? Most of the time the answer is yes, but you know it's coming from a place of good nature. Or you know, hey, yeah, Kenton got that shot. I'm going to write to that shot when the video comes out, so that's when TV comes alive and the advantages it has over radio, because you marry the pictures and the words. You know, that was the one thing that in school was hammered home to me that still took a while to sink in when I actually got into the business, that if you marry your words to the pictures, it makes a story come alive in ways that others don't.
And it makes a photog feel better because you now feel like you're working with someone that has a vision.
Yeah.
You know, they know where, or if they're asking you to get that shot, it's because they already envision how they're going to edit that shot into the piece.
And I think when you're doing that stuff, especially with one-man band, it allows you to always think that way.
Yeah,
and that's always good. Yeah.
So that being said, obviously the value of hands-on experience. What was the best thing you learned in the classroom, though, that you used out?
Wow, that's a good. You know what I'd have to say? The best thing I learned in the classroom was my broadcast writing class. I thought that made my writing more concise, sharper for my packages and things I did, and I really always took that with me too. And other things I would say is sometimes some media theory stuff I learned too, because that made me start to realize what it is that people want really, and giving them that content. I think a lot of times people think just putting content out there instead of giving people what they really want. And I think that's ever so more important nowadays with the way media is online.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of traditional journalists struggle with that, and a lot of students come out of school too with that theory in their mind of, oh, I'm going to change the world and I'm going to be a traditional journalist because that's what they learn in school.
Yeah.
And there is a fear, even on my part, of the tail wagging the dog, and we was us putting more Kardashian on the news because that's what people want and that's what people are watching. But the fact of the matter is today, with so many options, if you don't give people that, they will find what they want, which is good and bad because it creates an opportunity to access the content that you want when you want it in ways that you never have before. The problem is if a person wants to consume their lives with Kardashian, then so be it. Sorry, Kim.
And it's funny.
And she is listening.
I don't ever judge those people. It's not my choice of content to either produce or put out. But I'm not saying there isn't a market for it.
Right.
I just totally relish the fact that there is an opportunity for people to come and listen to a podcast like this, or watch a live stream that I produce, or a live event that I would produce, no matter what it is, whether it's high school sports or a speaking engagement or something like that. I think that's great. I think it's great for what people can consume as far as media.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second because you mentioned that when you started this, there were three things you had. You had your YouTube, your Twitter, and your Facebook.
Facebook fan page, yeah.
Right. So with those three things, obviously that was a focus for you. But how important do you see social media being now in journalism, broadcasting, and sports?
Super important. Except I struggle. I'm going to be completely honest with this. I struggle with. I should post more.
Right.
I should. And I struggle with that sometimes too. And I don't think enough like, I should be posting this or I should be posting that. I try to do it more. I've used Instagram more for my business. Twitter is great to get updates out there. It connects things. It connects stuff with players. Facebook, as I said before, with advertising is a real good thing, especially doing video or audio out there. I think it's important because it's your marketing tool. I do think sometimes stuff on social media can become oversaturated and people post too much stuff, but I do think it's a great marketing tool. It's a great way to get your stuff out there, and it's a great way to connect with other people.
It's the direct connect.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a direct connect. And I think you have to use. If you don't use it, you're lost. You're already lost. You can't get by without not using it. You have to use it.
So now, Mike, for you, given the fact that you're in this market hitting the basically 14 to 25 range a lot, is what platform do you find that you get the most response on from people? Where's the most interaction for you?
Right now, the most interaction is on Facebook. Interesting enough, when I post up on Facebook.
That's really interesting because you hear a lot of times about, oh, mom's on Facebook, dad's on Facebook, and that there's kind of this removal from Facebook a little bit for a younger generation.
At least I will say with live streaming high school sports, I'm intrigued to see how it works with other stuff we start to live stream. I am starting to try to do.
Can you tell us some of those, or are they top secrets?
No, I can. We're trying to start doing some speaking engagements. I also worked on producing a little bit of a web series of Vikrina in Vogue. I'll give a shout out to that. There's 3 episodes of that out there.
Say it again.
Vikrina in Vogue.
Vikrina
It's a fashion, beauty web series I've worked on producing as well too. So it's not live, but as far as live streaming goes, like speaking engagements. So if somebody's having something where they're speaking, but everybody can get there, we're intrigued in doing that. How that'll translate to Facebook and Twitter, that'll be interesting. Sports in high school sports, I should say, is a little bit more niche and it's a little smaller connected. I have a lot of connections in that world through Facebook.
Right.
So I think that's why it works best for me. So what content I put out there easily spreads and goes out because I have so many coaches and players that I've known over 3 years and have supported, and that's been very helpful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but Facebook is good, man.
Do you have one that you like the most?
To use?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a good question. I would probably say, I think Twitter because it's shorter and I can get what I need to get out. So if there's like a game link, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing a game this Saturday, I can tweet that out really quick and put the link and people see it, or I can mention a coach or a player or a team.
Right.
People seem to respond to that well too, from what I've seen, and they share that as well too. But Facebook's where I've actually seen the most activity.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What piece of advice that you got somewhere along, I mean, I'm sure your mentor is going to be trending on Twitter after this podcast, so I'm going to guess that it came from him. But what's the one piece of advice that has stuck with you most that time and time again you go, yep, that's true, throughout your career so far?
And this could come from anywhere, not
anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
I'll have to credit my parents a lot for that, for this advice.
Love it.
And my dad, in that you just always work hard for what you do and what you believe in. Believe in what you're doing, believe in the process of what you're doing. Something my parents have always taught me. And I think that's the best advice that has helped me, because there hasn't always been smooth sailing times, as we talked before. It wasn't always like I went from here to there. There were tough times, there were scary times,
right.
But I believed in that, and I believe in myself, and I believe in the process of doing that. And I think if you believe in what you're doing, and you constantly put out good quality work, it's all gonna work out, man. It's good. Life is good. You should enjoy it and do what you love.
I earlier in the podcast, if you were watching the video feed here, I looked at my watch. I looked at that not because I was bored by the conversation or worried about anything. Honestly, I'm getting lost in the wine, to be honest with you. I feel like I should tell everybody. It's Santa Alicia Malbec. We should know. It's a 2014 vintage there. So we should know what we're drinking when it's wine, I guess. But anyway, so I was looking at my watch, but I was thinking about how you were saying earlier that when it's your own product, it's something you believe in, how exhausted you are after doing back-to-back broadcasts. It's now, before it was, I think 9:30, we're going on here 9:45, but it's 9:45 on a Monday night when we're recording this. Who knows when you're listening to it?
Right.
But on a Monday night, it's 9:45, and we're having a freaking blast.
And I love it.
Drinking wine, hanging out, talking about things that are important to us, and helping other people, hopefully at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a quality that's hard to get other places.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, maybe at a certain time people would have said, well, who's going to do that? Who's going to listen to a show with 3 guys, some brothers, or watching too, right? But you know what? I think when you're having engaging real-life conversations with stuff that can actually help people, and that's the other thing too, I think you mentioned, Joe, that's very important, is that the aspect of helping people.
Yeah.
And I do feel, I'm not saying that live streaming is changing the world. It's not going to change the world, but if somebody can be happy to see their son or daughter, or a coach can see some film on somebody else, or kids can see themselves in a way they can always go back and see because it's always archived, and that makes them happy, and people think the quality is good, that makes me happy.
On that note, with what you're doing, competition from things like Periscope.
Yeah.
How do you view things like that?
I love it. I use Periscope. And you know what?
Okay.
That's one of the social medias I forgot, and I should have done it. I try to use Periscope before games to give people little updates, or before I have an announcement of like something that's coming up. I think Periscope is great. I think it's one of the best social media stuff that's come in the last couple of years. Now, I know where you're going because it's like, oh, well, somebody can just take their phone and live stream a game. That's fine. Don't knock that person at all. But I just understand that at Backpack Broadcasting, we offer you play-by-play announcers. We offer you multiple camera angles. We offer you a scoreboard. So if you want the complete broadcasting experience, you should come and check us out.
And it goes with the quality. Nice. That goes along with the quality.
Yeah.
Right?
No disrespect to Periscope or anybody Periscoping, like, do it, because and I appreciate supporting people who support that, because it's another way for people to get out content.
Yeah.
I just always get concerned that people may devalue what other people do at maybe a little bit more of a level.
Do you guys feel that people still care about quality?
Man,
that goes to both of you.
That's a great question.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a really good question. I think we're questioning that a lot in journalism. I think we are. I think we're at this point where we're
testing it.
that.
We're testing it.
I had to take a bite to buy time.
Joe can probably say this. All of us can say this, having worked for a news station or within a news station.
Yeah.
We're now seeing a lot of, grabs from people shooting stuff on their iPhones. iPhones and Galaxy phones are shooting such great stuff right now.
That's true.
So it's funny because the quality is actually getting a little bit better. But I also want to say I don't think that the person shooting an iPhone should be compared to somebody who's a professional photographer like Kenton here. I think that it's getting muddled a little bit sometimes. We have to be very careful about that. But I think the thing is everybody wants content now. And it's the immediacy to the content, and that's where I get a little concerned.
So they settle.
Yeah, there is a bit of settling. But I believe this with any business. If you put something out there enough that's quality, that it gets to their heart and they're willing to come back to it because they love it and they can respect that quality, they will come back and see that. Once you start to dumb it down or downgrade your quality, I think that's when you're sort of lost in the game already.
So I have a theory in life, okay? And it's make something for $1 million that only a few people can buy and they want it just because of the exclusivity, or make something like silly bands that cost whatever it was, $1 a pack or something like that millions of people will buy. I say that to say, I think when it comes to broadcasting, journalism, production in general, I think the middle ground is much like the middle class, maybe, is getting phased out.
Yeah.
Because people either want it right now and they want almost raw, crazy, outlandish stuff.
Right.
Or they want that high quality production. I think things like Netflix, HBO are doing better than ever with the quality they put behind their products. I think because we have actors, directors on this as well. So things like that I think are thriving right now. But so is the bottom of the barrel. I've said that television has never been better or worse in history, I think, than right now.
I would agree with that, actually.
So, people sometimes want to turn their minds off. They want to see the Real Housewives. My wife watches it on a regular basis. I meditate, I got into that for 2016. Whatever, however you turn your mind off.
I get stuck watching Housewives.
Right.
Sorry to hear that.
Me too. Fortunately, she's probably watching it right now, so it's a respite for both of us. I don't watch any of them.
No.
New York and Orange County, I think she watches.
Beverly Hills, Beverly Hills, Orange County.
I think so. I don't know. I don't know. Sorry, ladies listening to the podcast. Yeah, you guys can start your own podcast. That's the beauty of this. You can start your own podcast about the Real Housewives, and you'll have more listeners than we have.
Probably.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's no knock. Like, hey, there's people out there that want to hear that.
Anyway, so I think that yes, I think that there still is a place for quality. I think that the quality stuff has as much value as the high quality stuff has as much value as the low quality stuff. I think unfortunately some of that middle ground gets lost. Some of the things that are just on the cusp aren't going to get the recognition they should or deserve. I think things like the New York Times are going to stand and be the pillars of time. I think you're going to see, especially when it comes to journalism, more organizations fade away because there's such a rush to get out there that maybe they misstep. And when it comes to journalism, I mean, either you're doing all, and I say journalism in this sense, you're doing all Kim Kardashian and feeding the beast of what they want, TMZ style and things like that, or you're trying to do the higher end. If you try and go in the middle ground right now, I think you're going to get lost, because there's am I feeling the need to get it out there first? And if I'm feeling the need to get it out there first and still be considered a respected journalism organization, there's going to be missteps. There's going to be mistakes.
Right.
I mean, we've seen
I have all the facts.
Right.
I have, yeah.
We've seen it with CNN even, you know. There's a rush to get it out there, the highest of the high.
All right. And I think with that being said, I think that's why something that I'm trying to move into doing the well too is some, you know, higher end, maybe like magazine sports styles pieces that you might see in other places, because that focus on stories in the city but going a little bit more in depth, that's actually the next level of what I really want to do. That's the kind of journalism I've always wanted to do. So,
you know, and Kenton, I don't know if you remember, but when we had Adam Lefko on the podcast, it was really interesting because he does sports and he talks about how he can kind of almost, he reads like politics and things like that, because sports is his job, so it's not as heavy as he described it, so he can kind of process some of that heavy stuff, whereas somebody who's maybe a police officer or a firefighter doesn't want to go home and read about more heavy stuff.
Right.
But he said that when it comes to doing some feature stories, those are the ones that hit home. He got a message from somebody who a year later was saying how, you know, I still remember the story you did about my son. It was great. I just got a story. This was something that was almost routine to me, but I did a story and I remember it because this guy caught my attention, and we were just doing a last-minute Christmas shopping story, and he was out there shopping for a diamond for his wife, and at the end of it, he just said, "Merry Christmas, Rosalie," and it was just such a way that it was so genuine, and there was every ounce of love that man had was in that statement. And it's just weird how you can convey that sometimes. Well, anyway, I got a message on Facebook from somebody who watched that story this year. He passed away shortly after Christmas, and they recorded that episode of that newscast, that story, and they watch it every year now around Christmas to remember him. And like they reached out to me and told me that I'm going to be a part of their family. So things like that, it's just weird. And most of the time, it doesn't come from last minute shopping stories, you know, but you never know where it's going to come from.
No, you don't.
And feature stories, things like that, being that connection, having that connection to people.
Everything we do in broadcast affects someone.
It's amazing.
You know what? I had a similar story that I didn't realize would have been ever affected that way. I did a story for Nets Daily a couple years ago. I did a feature on Jeffrey Gamblero, rest his soul, who passed away. And I did it because he was just had so much energy, and I walked up to him one day.
Just for the people who don't know, a little background, Jeffrey Gamblero was a graffiti artist and a huge Nets fan. He was really connected to 5 Points. If you don't know 5 Points, check that out. It was a graffiti mecca, and there's a whole story there when that documentary comes out someday. But really beloved by the Nets. He was crazy. He was a season ticket holder, would be down there he would wear a Nets jersey, which for those who don't know, the Nets jerseys are usually black or white, and then he's got usually an electric, some kind of color t-shirt. So you couldn't miss him in the crowd. Beloved by the fan base over there. So anyway, he passed away, and
I met him at a net. I think when I first started working for Nets Daily, he actually knew who I was, which I was just like, okay. And then we started talking. I think the second year I was working for Nets Daily, I said, hey, I want to do something on like the fans here, and I'm going to feature. They have some unique fans for the Nets. They really have some unique fans around the arena, and I decided to feature him.
Awesome.
And he did, and I shot a piece with him. Like basically a whole game was against the Pistons, and I did these interviews with him, and it came out really good. And you know, he passed away, obviously, a little bit over a year ago, and I've had so many people watch that video more than, and have reached out to me with the same thing. Hey, thanks for doing this video for him, because they watch it too in his tribute, and that I never thought making that this would last or have this kind of impact on somebody, but that makes me feel good that even through his tragic passing, he still was his memories able to live on as his great energy. Yeah, his energy. He had a great energy as a fan, and like that, like you said, Joe, in that moment you had with that guy buying the diamond, there were things he said and stuff when I interviewed him in the sound bites, and I remember when I was cutting it, I was like, oh, this is just great. Like these are great moments, and I think that video really captured his energy.
Sometimes in school they tell you to look for those characters when you're out reporting, and the thing is, sometimes the characters that I find most often are the people who are in public what most people are at home. There are things they're afraid, I'm going to misstep on something. And I've actually, this is one thing that I wrestle with my wife right now, is because we are stupid and crazy sometimes together. And I'm like, listen, I'm in front of the public. I owe it to be honest. I mean, today I posted a picture on Instagram of her love notes to me, which were describing how smelly I was and how I need just a note to self, you smell really bad. And I put this, it gets more likes on Instagram than any real thing that I put out there. But you know what? That is real. And these characters that we describe them on, almost describing them as that is almost a disservice, because they're more real. Most people are more characters in public, trying to be reserved and hide their true personalities.
You end up being
You're more of a character than they are.
I like that.
So I just really appreciate that authenticity and that genuineness that makes people what they are along the way.
Absolutely.
So that's fantastic. And you know what? With the Jeffrey Gamblero story, the other thing is too, you see how much somebody meant to other people.
Yeah.
And it's nice when you can bring to life, sorry for no pun intended there, but I couldn't think of a better word, but the spirit of someone, to bring it to the masses when it's just a quick second or a few minutes through a camera and a television or a computer screen or whatever that case may be. That's what makes this so powerful and so amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what I liked when I was doing that was that I had no limit on who I could have had. I don't remember how long that piece was. Maybe it was 4 minutes, but I had no limit on it, and I love that.
Tell his story.
Yeah, I could tell a story, and that made me say, I want to start doing more longer form stories like this, and that's eventually what we hope to start doing at Backpack Broadcasting.
So that being said, the time frame I think is something that's really interesting, because when it comes to traditional broadcast media, be it news, be it a program, there's a restraint of you have to fill X amount of time, but you can only fill X amount of time also. So be it a slow news day, you still have to fill the hour newscast that you have, or for many stations throughout the country, the 21 hours of news a week, 7 hours a day that you have to fill, or 24-hour news stations, even on slow news days. So you end up creating the news, so to speak, remake things, stories that maybe wouldn't be otherwise. But at the same time, the opposite is true. I mean, maybe not so much for the 24-hour news stations, but for the traditional, networks that you're used to. If it's a busy news day, a lot of times it's like, we have to fit this in to X amount of time. So your producer sends out a note that says, I need every reporter's package to be 1:10 today, or 1.5 minutes, whatever, depends on the station where you're at. So that changes. So how do you find the internet affects that? And do you think people kind of maybe take too much advantage of the endless amount of time that you have?
I used to worry about that when I first started doing this on my own. Started doing stuff myself. I used to be like, oh man, is this too long? Is this too short?
And you're worrying about attention span? Or
because you always would hear that. And I guess it comes from like being in news stations. And even when I worked at the Post, because that was the first video journalism job I had, and I was working online. And I remember a producer I had there would always tell me, like, always cut it down, be shorter. But sometimes I would fight with him on bites and be like, no, this is good. and we should keep this. And, I struggle with that. And I think now I'm more free of that. I'm going to go with what I think is the best thing and put it out there. Obviously, when you work for certain companies, you can't do that. But for myself, I'll go with what I think is the best. I don't try to give things too long. I think it depends on the piece. You can feel what it should be about. I never heard a person tell me that Jeffrey Gamblero piece, which I thought was very good, was too long.
Right.
I think it all depends on the piece, and you have to have a feel of it.
How long was it?
I think it was about 4 minutes, if I'm...
4?
Maybe it's about that, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. I'm somebody who, especially early on in my career, and you'll probably find this at some point, that and some people never get over this, but you get married to things because it's yours and you craft it and you have an idea in your head. And I always try and put that version together and then go back and say, okay, let me listen to this as a viewer, watch it and be like, all right, I don't need this, I don't need that. But still, I think sometimes it's hard for people to do that. That's probably the hardest thing to do.
I think it is.
So to have somebody else to watch that is a big thing, you know, that you trust, and they say, oh no, don't touch it. And that was the biggest thing. If you have somebody who once says to me, no, that was great, don't touch it, then I'll go to them every single time because I trust them that, all right,
maybe that's an editorial thing because of the photog. I always have to look at something or whatever I do twice. The first time I watch it, I couldn't tell you what the story was about.
Okay.
Because all I'm looking at is the way it was shot. The way everything was composed. You know, so for me, I think that's different.
Interesting.
I always look at it from the viewer's perspective. I imagine myself sitting on my couch, if I'm not on my couch already. And,
let's be honest, he's usually on his couch.
And that's how I watch it. And then a lot of times I have to rewind it and watch it again to figure out, okay, now what were they talking about?
That's interesting because I you know, obviously I'm probably more with Joe on this, that from the journalistic point of view, and I always look at everything I do twice. But it's very hard. I almost have to, if I'm doing something longer form, I almost will step away from it. I'm talking about for a while, maybe a day or two. If I don't have the rush to put it out, I'll take a couple days away from it and then look at it because I think what happens is that you are too married in the moment. But when you're doing news, you know this from when you're doing daily news, you got to put something out real quickly. You're like, I got to get this out. I got to make sure my stand-up was right, my sound bites were cool, and we got to go. So it's different. But when you're working on your own thing, I think it's nice to step away from it from a little bit and look back and then see how you feel. I try to think about how other people feel about it. Or like you said, give it to someone you trust. Because I just spoke to somebody yesterday. I was telling her about these things, these longer form pieces I'm trying to do, and she's really into film and she does a lot of writing and stuff. I said, listen, I'm going to give you stuff to watch because she's actually not into sports.
Oh, okay.
But I trust her opinion on shot composition, the way things are.
Right.
So I said, hey, I'm going to give it to you. I'll be sending you stuff to watch, and you tell me how you feel about it.
And if it captures her, then you know you did a good job.
See, that's
right, if she's into sports.
She's a good friend of mine, but she's not a sports fan.
Yeah, right. If they get me into Real Housewives, they've done a great job.
Nene, come on.
If you get converted, let me know.
Will do. I'll send you that episode. No, but you're totally right, and that's a great. I mean, on a day-to-day in journalism, you don't get that time to step away a lot. But you know what? When it comes to sweeps pieces, maybe you do. And one of the things is you live that moment. So sometimes you might have a memory from a moment that was great because you were there and living in it, but it doesn't come across the same way in the way it was shot or in the way it came through the camera. But sometimes other moments come across as hysterical or deep or just so meaningful in ways that you didn't realize in the moment. So you kind of have to let them both play together.
Definitely.
That's where you come in, Kenton, and you got to be like, hey, this played really well.
Yeah.
Check this out.
I did the color bars to bookmark this. Those are shortcut tips. We'll get to it in another podcast for those who that might be a different language. Anyway, so Dexter, what were some of the best tools that you have right now? What do you go to on a regular basis that maybe people don't realize is out there? Something that might be different that you can say, hey, if there's an app, if there's a piece of equipment, you mentioned the camera that you bought, something that's really valuable on a day-to-day basis that if somebody's got maybe the $20, $50, go invest in this because it's worth it.
Go invest and do it. It's funny when you think about camera equipment and stuff. None of it's really cheap.
Yeah.
I think there are good lower-end cameras that you can get. So I'm going to talk about cameras for a second. I recommend to a couple students to get a Canon XA25. That's a nice, good lower-end camera. I personally shoot daily, mostly on a Panasonic HMC 150 that I love. That's my baby. I can't do anything literally without it. So I think that's really a good thing.
For those who can't see this on the video right now, if you're listening on the podcast, the way his eyes lit up, it was like there was a pinup or something. Maybe he looked at a Penthouse centerfold when he was talking about the camera.
I don't know if I find it that sexy.
Well,
Maybe.
it was definitely pretty sexy.
I don't know if Marguerite will be happy about that and saying that. But
listen, if her main competition is a camera, she doesn't really have anything to worry about.
You have nothing to worry about. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. It was the wine. It was the Malbec. That statement.
No, but
anyway.
I would have to say that I'm trying to think if there's anything smaller that I use right now that's really good. But I would say mainly that. Obviously, my MacBook. I can't. That's the other thing. I couldn't live without that. I do my editing. I use that for my switcher, for my productions. I do edit on Final Cut Pro. I also know how to edit on Premiere.
7 or X?
X. I switched over to X last year.
Okay.
I know some people don't like it. I've liked it. I think it's pretty good.
It grew on me.
Yeah.
It grew on me.
I'm the same way. I think there was a little bit of a learning curve. So if you're willing to learn, maybe that's the common denominator here. But if you're willing to learn something new, I say that X is. It makes some of the complicated things a lot easier to do. There are some of the really, really complicated things that you really can't do the same way that you could in 7, or you can in programs like Adobe Premiere or even in what's the other one?
Avid.
Thank you. I'm sorry. But if you're, especially for news, when you're trying to get something out there, it makes you can do some really cool things in a short amount of time with the way they did it.
I think they made the workflow better. That's one thing I like about it. I think the workflow's a little better with X. I've gotten used to it. It was a struggle at first. I actually was forced to because I had 7 on another computer and it crashed. And I lost the program. It was all like, all right, it's time to do it. And I could have went to Premiere too, which I also have to. But yeah, man, that's great.
And one of the things that I usually try to tell people who are either breaking in this business or if they've taken any of the classes that I've taught before, it's that don't be afraid of an editing software, because for the most part there are a lot of similarities. Maybe the cut buttons might be a different command. To mark your in and mark your out might be something different. To lay something down on the timeline might be different. But for the most part, if you know the basics and the concepts,
you'll be fine.
Yeah. You'll learn it the same way you learn to type. It comes along very quickly.
We're just creatures of habit.
Right.
I think we like, and I felt that way too going from 7 to X. I was like, I like it like this and all the shortcuts. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, I gotta change. Certain things change, but it's the same stuff.
Yeah. Completely. So don't be scared of it. It might take a little bit of a learning curve, but spend your weekend with it, and by the end of a week, I would say you'll probably be on top of anything.
You know what? You asked for what was a good guide or something I used. When I was transitioning to that, I just looked at a lot of YouTube tutorials and lynda.com. Shout out to lynda.com. They are great. They teach any program you want to learn in like video software. That's a good site for it. Awesome. You can learn. They charge a subscription, but it's
worth the investment.
Oh, it's worth it.
Exactly.
Because it'll, especially if you just, they break it down into like intro classes and different things like that. So if you just need like a quick introduction, perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Can't beat that.
What advice would you give somebody breaking into the business right now?
Breaking into the business right now. First thing I would say is, look, if you're coming out of college, do as much as you can in college to learn about what
I say
you
that
do.
all the time.
Because you'll never get that time again.
Not just time, but you talked about how expensive cameras are. You get access to cameras there, and it's like, I remember, I did it. I was in college, and I was like, I don't want to go shoot this story right now on this I got to go rent a camera from the Cage, and I got to give them my ID, and then I got to go out and actually have to shoot the story with somebody else. God, I wish I had done that all the time. I wish I had gone and said, hey, I want to shoot this weekend. Let's be creative. Hey, what can we go shoot? I got a free camera. I can go rent.
Let's fast forward.
Yeah.
Somebody give you a camera.
God, exactly.
Do more. Be more creative, because you'll never have that time again. Create your own show if you want to. Create your own podcast if you want to. Then there's no time like you ever had in college. Going into something Joe said, I will also bring up. If you can save money to start buying equipment, do it.
Yeah.
Even if it's a MacBook, if it's a small camera, do it. So you have more access to do stuff on your own.
And this is for any career field within broadcast.
Any career field.
You're gonna have to buy something.
Right.
That's one of the things I tell my students, St. Francis, and a couple kids that have graduated have done that. Came back to me and they come back to me, hey Dex, what camera should I buy? But I've told them like, hey, because I'm like, this will help you eat.
This is gold right now. Honestly, right now, I wish somebody had told me this when I was in school.
Me too, because I would have been better coming out at 22. And I would put it like this: I would have started backpack broadcasting earlier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But everything happens for a reason.
That's right.
True.
And we have, but my thing
If
would
we
be,
knew then what we know now.
invest in yourself in time and buying equipment. That's my biggest advice, because it will set you up. And my other last piece of advice is, somebody actually told me this in the industry a while ago, and that was, look for any opportunity that comes your way, and if you think it's going to take you to where you need to go, take advantage of that opportunity. Even if the job is not exactly what you think it's going to do, try to look at it that way. Because one of the best jobs I ever had, in my opinion, it wasn't probably the greatest job in the world of work, but I would consider it maybe the most important job I had, was being a game night editor at MLB.com. I became a quicker editor, faster editor. There were some amazing guys I worked with there that knew a lot of stuff, and that's where I just learned so much about editing. And that was a great job. I worked a lot of crazy hours, but it was a great job. So take advantage of any opportunity that can come your way.
All right.
I think that's a big piece of advice for reporters or aspiring reporters. You know, the ones that are here doing their internship, maybe got a part-time gig here, but then something opened up in Wisconsin or someplace.
Oh, for sure.
Do I leave New York to go to Wisconsin?
It might, yeah, or in another department, even if it's like news and you want to really do sports.
Right.
Sometimes you never know where that avenue is going to take you. If it's an opportunity to do what you need to do, take advantage of it.
Yeah, and if you get in a place and it might not be the job that you wanted specifically, but if you prove that you can do good work and that they can trust you and you're reliable, they'll give you more opportunities.
Absolutely.
And when those positions open up, I mean, you'll have already made your reputation there to get something. But also I would say make your intentions known, because if you sometimes you get in a position where you don't want to get pigeonholed, you get in a position and they only think of you as that position. So make it known from day one and take advantage of every opportunity when you're in there. It's a lot the same way I wish I had done things in college. I did do things when I was at my first station to take advantage of opportunities, whether it was produce, so that producing led me to anchoring the morning newscast because I had to produce that newscast. So that got me on the anchor desk. We started a sports show while we were down there called the Cape Fear Sports Report, where, you know, the guy I was working with, it was his baby. He started it as a magazine that was similar to what you're talking about. It was high school sports, it was local sports, and then he said, well, let's turn this into a TV show, and he ended up buying the airtime from the station that we were at, and we would put together the sports show. I mean, it was a labor of love, but we would put together the sports show to air on that station on the weekend.
That's how you started anchoring.
And and that helped with the anchor experience. And then, oh my God, that helped with things like this too, because what did we do? All right, we're here at Burger Bistro right now. We started shooting our show at one of the local bars down there, Hell's Kitchen, and it was a sports bar, and they loved to have us. We would be in there before they opened sometimes, you know, just talking about the weekend sports that was for high school sports down there. So yeah, there's definitely different opportunities and everything. You're gonna learn skills. Appreciate those opportunities and learn the skills you don't know. Make your weaknesses your strengths when you're in there.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the things that you like right now? What inspires you? What are the people that you look up to? What are the stories you're reading, shows you're watching right now? And I'm sure there's not much time for a lot of that.
No, I fit it in. I think I get inspired from like so many different things, man. Like from music to shows to other people in my field doing stuff. I get inspired. One of the things I would say that inspires me the most for journalism is seeing other people do what they love and create their own thing, like I did. So this show inspires me.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean
Appreciate
that.
it. And right back at you.
Yeah.
It does. When I see that, I think it's great. I think it gives people younger than us the courage to go forward and do that. I think that's definitely inspiring. As far as like, I love watching different TV shows, and I think I take a lot of what I do with my work from film and different TV shows that I like, whether it's old or new. I get inspired by musical artists.
Nice, like who?
I'm a huge fan of Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
Is my favorite artist right now. I think, and J. Cole are two of my favorite rappers right now.
Good.
Yep.
I like them because it's kind of a lot about what we're talking about. They've broken out of the mold and the box of what people think hip-hop is, and they've put their product out in a certain way, and I find that very inspirational. They stuck with it. And they didn't go the traditional way, and so that's very inspirational to me.
We talk about the rejection that comes along with this business. Every job you don't get, every person who says you don't look the right way. So you got to be ready to shake off the haters, to borrow from Taylor Swift here, to shake it off.
Got to shake it off. I mean, if I never shook it off, I never would have even started Backpack Broadcasting. Even when that company told me, hey, you can't do this on our time, I still found an opportunity to make it. So you have to just believe in yourself in the process. And people are going to tell you no. They never gave me an opportunity there, but other people have, and they saw it.
Awesome. You know, I feel really bad because, you know, Dexter hasn't taken more than 3 bites of his burger since we've been
okay.
here because we had him talking
all
the
I
whole
say is
time.
bread. Oh, okay.
Even though the burger is kind of cold, it's still good.
I finished mine a long time ago, but I was very interested. It's nice that he was willing to tell us some stories and talk us through it. Well, we got here. Kenton's done. I'm done. He's been filling the airtime for us, so we really appreciate that.
That's Joe's way of saying that. Trying to kind of put it down that he wasn't that hungry, but he was hungry.
Yeah, I was totally hungry. Listen, I want to wrap up here by how can people find you, find Backpack Broadcasting if they're interested, social media, Facebook. What do you suggest?
Yeah, you can come to backpackbroadcasting.com. That is our website. You can follow us on Twitter at Bag Broadcaster. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram at Backpack Broadcasting. You can find us on Periscope as well too, under Backpack Broadcasting. So we're everywhere. If you are in charge of a league, a sports team, you have an event that you want to be streamed live, contact us, backpackbroadcasting2010@gmail.com. And support this podcast. You guys need to.
Thank you so much. And of course, for all the listeners, all the viewers out there, we'll put the information up on the website. It's bibmedia.tv, bibmedia.tv. That's for Born in Brooklyn, of course. I want to thank, obviously, Burger Bistro for having us here. The burger, 2 million types of ways, so you can definitely make your own. If anybody wants anything between 2 pieces of bread, lettuce, or nothing, I guess you can find it here. Dexter, man, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We really appreciate it. Please check him out.
Yep.
And of course, head over to the website. We'll have all the information. For Broadcasting in Black and White, as always, I'm Joe Messeri.
I'm Kenton Young.
Thanks for listening, guys, or watching this time.